Hello, my friends. Welcome to Lindy's Magpie Reads. This is a place where I talk about books, and I have 10 to tell you about that I finished in the past week. They are from 9 different countries, and they run the gamut. I've got a picture book, graphic novel, poetry. There's some in audiobook format. I've got fiction for kids, for teens, for adults, a nonfiction, including a memoir, so all kinds. So I'm going to get into those quickly. I've got so many to tell you about. But first, I just want to say thank you so much, everybody, for your healing wishes last week. My back is doing much better. Out in the garden today. Oh, it's so great to see spring here in Victoria. The plum trees are blooming, the cherry trees are blooming, there's bulbs blooming all over the place. So, very cheery to be here. And I'm also really happy to be here talking to you about books. My other main news is that with the good weather, I have resumed rowing. So I am back on the gorge, sculling. I've been a couple of times already this past week. Love it. Okay, on to the books, starting with this collection of poetry, Dog and Moon by Kelly Shepard. Now, full disclosure, Kelly is a friend of mine. He lives in Edmonton. I know him as an amazing friend, and I've loved his poetry in the past too. And still, I was surprised by the collection of ghazals in this book. And I'm going to have to read you some so that you know what I mean about the surprising juxtapositions that he's got in here. Before I get to that, the dedication at the beginning for Nikika and her puppies and their families. I want to explain that. Nikika is Kelly and his wife Karen's dog, the first dog that they got. And Lori and I used to dog sit for her. And we said, if she ever has puppies, we want one. And we now have one of Nikika's puppies, Joni. She's love of our life. And you've seen her perhaps in my previous videos. I'm going to put in a few images here. So I could pretty much open this book anywhere to give you a wonderful taste of the writing. So let's just see what happens. This poem is titled Red Ochre Handprints. Just when you think you have it all figured out, there's another surprise in the study of cave art. When there's a wildfire, yellow grass blackens. Then it greens. The mind is already in the next place. Does that mean it doesn't wander? Over their morning coffee, firefighters study color theory. When they sleep, they dream in black and white. Pointillism, the heartbeat loud in the throat. Vandalizing valuable works of art is a new form of protest. If they were alive today, the artists themselves would probably get it, but art collectors don't. The pressure of the breath. Stare at a painting long enough, and you're in it. You look out at the strange person who is staring in at you. There are nature poems with police helicopters intruding on them. There's poems about being sleepless, having insomnia, poems about dogs, poems about work, poems about life. Now, almost all of the books that I'm going to tell you about today have at their core a question about how do we live our lives. So even the dog in this next book. So this is a graphic novel, Detective Stanley and the Mystery at the Museum. And it's by a New Zealand duo of creators, Hannah Tunnicliffe and Erica Harrison. And Stanley has just retired as a police detective. The next morning, he slept in, he's digging into his pile of pancakes, and he gets a request. Can he come back to work? There's been a break-in at the museum. This is so much fun, and Mondrian's art is the inspiration for the art in here. Suitable for ages 5 to 7 and up. And also, I'm going to count this as participating in March Mystery Madness. You only have to read one book to participate, and I don't know if I'll get to another one. Here we go. And now, still on the theme of retirement, Tokyo These Days by Taiyo Matsumoto. This is manga, and it's in the left to right format. This was translated from Japanese by Michael Arias. So it is the same author who wrote Sunny. I don't know if you've read that. I do recommend it. And like that book, this one is based on real life. In this case, it is a manga editor who has just retired, but he's finding it hard to let go. So he's still interacting with the people at his old workplace, the artists that he used to work with. And he's got this bird that he talks to. The one sort of supernatural or unexplained aspect of this book is he can understand birds when they talk. Anyway, this editor comes up with a project, a post-retirement project. And this is volume 1 of, I think, a series of 3. It's not going to be a long series, and I definitely want to find out what happens next. The art features Tokyo city scapes, and they really give you a sense of how an individual is small against the city, and a real sense that this is real life taking place in a real context. Oh, and the reason that I picked it up is because it is on the LA Times Book Prize shortlist in the graphic novel category, along with a book that I talked about not that long ago, Petar and Liza, which is by Miroslav Sekulik-Struja, translated by Jenna Allen. And next, another work of translation, Griso, The One and Only, by Roger Mello, translated from Portuguese by Daniel Hahn. So this is a children's picture book. Roger Mello is a prolific Brazilian children's picture book writer and illustrator. He's the first Latin American to have been given the Hans Christian Andersen Award. And in this story, a lonely unicorn travels across the world and across time looking for another unicorn. What he finds is a winged horse who is looking for another winged horse, and the two find each other. And one of the wonderful things that Mello has done in here is interpreted art from across the world and across the centuries. This is suitable for ages 4 to 8 and up. For this next book, we're going starting from Brazil and traveling to Ireland. I'm talking about The Language of Remembering by Patrick Holloway. In this novel, Oisín travels with his wife and their child from Brazil, where they've been living for a number of years, back to Oisín's home county of Cork in Ireland. And the story's told in 2 different timelines. There's a now, which is from Oisín's second-person viewpoint, and then, which is the viewpoint of his mother, Bridget, who was pregnant with him when she was a teenager and not yet married. The reason that Oisín has come home to Ireland is because Bridget has early onset Alzheimer's. So there's lots of family drama going on, but the real pull for me in this novel is the characters. This is definitely a character-driven novel with excellent dialogue, and it's just so easy to empathize with the characters. So, for example, we see Oisín being a father with his toddler who is insisting on wearing the pink sandals, and he's trying to convince her, here's your Mickey Mouse boots, these are going to be more suitable. So the realism, the issues surrounding pregnancy and childbirth, including tragic outcomes, near misses, are covered in this novel with great sensitivity. And I am so glad that Sean, of Sean Breathes Books, talked about it on his channel, and he had the author Patrick Holloway as a mystery guest. I will link that video down below, Holloway talking about this novel, because I received a review copy from the publisher, époque, and I often disregard review copies. If I am going to be talking about a review copy on this channel, I'll mention it, so you'll know. If you watch my channel, I don't mention it very often. Anyway, thank you to the publisher, because I very much enjoyed reading this. It is out now, so you should be able to get yourself a copy and read it. If anything that I've said has piqued your interest, and I hope it has. And next, we're going to the Philippines, where the author Randy Ribay was born. This book is Everything We Never Had. The author grew up in the U.S. His previous novel, The Patron Saint of Nothing, is outstanding. That one is actually set in the Philippines, and it's under the reign of the former President Duterte, who was recently arrested, I think just this week, for crimes against humanity. We'll see what happens to him. In this novel, we have 5 generations in a Filipino family, the men in the family. So lots of fathers and sons, starting with Francisco, who at age 15 left the Philippines because his father had abandoned his family. So Francisco went to America to help support his mother and his younger siblings. Then we meet Emil, Francisco's son, and his story takes place in mostly the 1960s. And Emil's son, Chris, his story is mostly in the 1980s. And Chris's son, Enzo, whose portion of the story takes place in 2020. So there's rotating storylines between these men and they are so believable. There are uncomfortable relationships between these men, and Enzo has a lot of anxiety. He really wants his dad and his grandfather to get along. Not an easy task. This book won the American Library Association Asian and Pacific American Award in the YA category. Very deserving. Next up, I've got a couple of audiobooks. Both are nonfiction. I'm going to start with one by the queer author and journalist Kathryn Schulz. It's called Being Wrong: Adventures in the Margin of Error. This one's not new. It came out in 2010. I did read her more recent memoir, Lost and Found, and I recommend that one as well. This one is all about the sociology of making mistakes. So there is a lot of positive to be derived from our human errors. Sometimes there's no positive, for example, with medical errors. So Kathryn Schulz is looking at mistakes from all kinds of directions. Just going to read a couple of things that really caught my attention. Just as our love of being right is best understood as a fear of being wrong, our attraction to certainty is best understood as an aversion to uncertainty. And in this time of hostility towards Canada from the US government, so much uncertainty, I could relate. Wait for the wind to pass. She says, listening is one of the best ways we can make room in our lives for our own fallibility, which I think is excellent advice. So this is very philosophical, but it's also presented with such a light touch, and I found it a total pleasure to listen to. The audiobook is read by Mia Barron. Next, I have a memoir for you, Still Life at 80, The Next Interesting Thing, and it's by Abigail Thomas, read by the author. So what she's doing is sharing all these anecdotes about everyday life. She's 79 years old, almost 80. She apparently has written over 20 works of fiction, poetry, and memoir. This is my first encounter with her work, and I love it. For example, when she's talking about her failing memory, she says, it's a plus. Nothing is old hat anymore. I figure I have a choice. I can worry myself into the ground, that's one, or I can think of my failing memory as an achievement. I'm finally living in the moment. And she talks about her mental health. She says, I'm teetering next to a depression that will hang around like a low-grade fever. So I look for something to see or do. And she tells us, keep your senses open. Follow the details. Detail is the antidote to boredom and tends to keep depression at bay, which I think is fine advice for all of us. Next, I have another work of translated fiction. This one is from Sweden, Collected Works by Lydia Sandgren, and it's translated by Agnes Broomé. I did this as a buddy read with my friend Kathy and Sarah of Roadworthy. We took 5 weeks to read this. It is pretty chunky, and as Sarah pointed out, It is so unusual for a character-driven novel to be so fat. The writing is so compelling. Wow, can she write? So all of the everyday details of life collected into what makes a life are presented in such an engaging way that there wasn't any part of this book where I thought, she could have cut that out, or, maybe this could have been a little shorter. No. It's there because it needs to be there. This won the August Prize in Sweden. And the reason why I picked it up is because it was Sean Breeze's books' best book of the year. I will link his video about that down below. You can hear him talk about it. No spoilers. I am going to read you just a tiny bit to give you a feel for her prose. A few months earlier, he had ended things with Britta, and it had been a protracted, grand, Wagnerian ending. Britta, the soprano, refused to get off the stage. Martin, the reluctant tenor, glanced helplessly at the curtain. The whole affair could have easily been told in 2 acts and would have required no particular effort from the orchestra. So much. So what is it about? We've got 3 main characters. Martin, who I was just talking about, his wife Cecilia, and Martin's longtime friend Gustav. And they were a trio of friends, did so many things together. Martin and Cecilia got married, they had a couple of kids. But at the beginning of this book, we learn that Cecilia has disappeared. She left her family when the younger child wasn't very old, and she hasn't been heard from since. So there's that mystery that is propelling us through this book, as well as the narrative shifts back and forth in time, and there's always this question: why did she leave? Where did she go? What's she doing now? And of course, it's all resolved at the end. Well, resolved to my liking. I adored the ending of this book. If you've read it and feel the same way, let me know in the comments. Yeah, this is a very special novel. But the most special of all of these books, my favorite of the bunch, is this skinny little novel from Spain, Boulder, by Eva Baltasar, translated from Catalan by Julia Sanches. Now, I had previously read her book Permafrost and loved it. She writes about very queer lesbian characters. I love that. And Boulder in here. She's named Boulder because she's like a rock out in the ocean, doesn't need anybody, until she falls in love with a Swedish woman, Samsa, and they make a life together. I'm not the only one who loves this. I know it's been on BookTube a lot. I'm so glad I finally got to it. But if you don't trust me, Brian of Bookish and Roz of Scallydandling About the Books, both of them had it as a top book of 2023. I think for Roz, it was her top translated book of 2023. Brian had it as his top book overall. We'll see where it lands for me by the end of the year. We're only in mid-March now, but love it. It's the combination of the character and prose style and the fact that it's digging into relationships in such a deep way that just feels so true, and it's telling me something new at the same time. I just got to read you something from here. So, a big thing that happens in the life of Boulder and Samsa is Samsa really wants to be a mother, and Boulder is going along with it. A visibly pregnant woman is like an ancient witch. She guards the secret to life, and this makes her more than human, nearly semi-divine. Her energetic body is an enormous mouth that speaks on her behalf, regardless of whether anyone is listening. But a newly pregnant woman, a woman in her first trimester, now she's a hand grenade, a ticking bomb that sleeps beside you. Her uterus is the sensor that holds the diamond. It's a reactor. It contains the Big Bang, a surplus of neutrons and nitroglycerin. The smallest disturbance can set it off. And buckle in for some disturbance. So, that is all I've got for you today. Thank you so very much for watching. I always love hearing from you, so please do say hello in the comments. Let me know if you have read any of these, if you are planning to read any of them, what's good that you're reading. I always appreciate hearing about good books, so please, you know what to do. And until next time, in the meantime, happy reading, everybody. Bye for now.